before I introduce Chief Carey, I want to make explicit a connection that exists between the Flight Project and the Colorado Springs Police Department. Now, Flight is our major fundraising mechanism, funds the service fund. And earlier this year, the service fund financed the purchase of 2 tactical kits through Shield 616. You remember Jake Skipstad. So 2 of those are going to go to Chief Carey's officers. And we have to say, isn't it remarkable that something as small and frail as a butterfly serves to contribute to the protection of those big burly CSPD police officers? So your support of Flight results in many positive benefits to our community. Now, Chief Carey began his law enforcement career with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office in 1982. He joined the Colorado Springs Police Department in 1984 as an officer in patrol, and then went through Metro Vice, Narcotics and Intelligence Division, and virtually every other position you can have in the police department, all the way up to chief. He was appointed as chief in January 2012 after a stint as interim. He's married, he has 4 children, he has a master's degree in public administration from the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. The most important part of his bio is a loyal mountain lion. He is without a doubt one of the most progressive and successful police executives in the state of Colorado. He cares deeply about our community and has dedicated his professional life to keeping us safe. I am pleased to count him among my friends. Please give a warm Rotary Club of Colorado Springs welcome to Chief Peter Carey.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Chief.
Dr. Reed, thanks for the kind words. I don't know how much of that was true, but well, thank you. It's an honor to be here again. It's great to see some familiar faces and some new faces. I'm actually missing Mayor Souther's State of the City address by being here, so I'm anxious to see if he's outsourced the police department or put me underneath. I worry that he put me underneath the fire department, you know, and I got to worry about that. But it's good to see you. What I'd like to do this afternoon is tell you a little bit about just a little bit about myself and the Colorado Springs Police Department in the next 10 or 15 minutes. My hope is I don't interfere with your digestion of lunch too much, and we have some fun and talk about some things. Probably just hanging around and eating lunch. I've already been hit up by a handful of people about this case that's going on up north, the Mad Cooper case. You guys have probably heard about that, which is amazing. That has gotten international attention. BBC picked it up. Africa is calling about this issue. So it's amazing what hits the media. And if you were to ask me what's the most difficult part of my job, I would say 2 things: navigating politics and dealing with the media. And it's not getting any easier, and I'll give you a couple reasons why in the last few years. But as Dr. Reed said, I've got to play at the police department for the last 30, 35 years and some pretty fun assignments. By far and away, I love being a patrol officer, being a cop on the street on the beat. Midnight shift or swing shifts, that was a lot of fun to me. I personally thought that being a patrol officer, besides answering people's calls for help, was traffic enforcement and DUI enforcement. That to me was kind of a specialty I liked. I spent a time in Metro Vice and Narcotics. I was the guy when you pulled up to a red light and you looked at the guy in the car next to you, had that long Charlie Manson look and look back over at you, and you just wanted the light to turn green and go. I was that guy. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. When I went to narcotics, I knew nothing about it. And I learned so much about how illegal narcotics, specifically heroin in our community these days, is having an impact on everything from our schools to our violent crimes to our property crimes. So I'll touch on that a little bit. I worked in our tactical enforcement unit, our SWAT team, and I worked at our training academy. And again, both really good jobs. And before I was promoted to a command staff, I ran our major crimes unit, homicide unit, robbery, sexual assault. So I've got to see a lot of things in the police department and in the community in the last number of years. I've been your police chief for about 5.5 years now. And anybody know how long in America the standard police chief lasts in a big city? Yeah, 4. I'm overdue. I've overshot it by 1 year. 4 years, and I get it now. And I thought when I got the gig, if I lasted a couple years, it'd be okay. I understand now why it's only 4 years. There's a lot going on, and stress is a little bit high, but politics are tough. Not so much in this town as far as partisan politics, but 4 years is usually how long someone lasts before they go somewhere else. I want to start my brief comments by telling you in the last 5 years, 5.5 years of being your police chief, the most important thing I've learned. Are you ready? It is, just because I think something's funny, it doesn't mean I have to say it. Honesty. I'm a back east guy from Philadelphia, and it took me 5.5 years to realize when I get that thought that I don't have to share that with the world. And according to my deputy chiefs, it is a struggle. If one of those guys are sitting in the crowd right now, they give me the steel third to shut up. But just because I think it's funny doesn't mean I have to say it. So I've learned that. But actually, there's been some real lessons learned in law enforcement in the last few years. And I call it the post-Ferguson, Missouri world of policing. So in the last, was that about 4 years ago? Does anyone recall, 2013 or so?
Yep.
That changed policing. It changed policing in Colorado Springs, and it's amazing the impact of something that happens 1,000 miles away, 3 or 4 states away. When that tragedy happened in Ferguson, Missouri, it absolutely changed people's perceptions of policing. It changed police officers' perceptions of how they do the job and what we need to do to move on. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about that. One of the biggest mistakes I can make as your police chief is to make the mistake that I know what you want from law enforcement without asking you. And unfortunately, in the world of law enforcement, we have a long history of doing that, just saying, here's what you need to be safe. Don't ask, don't contact me, I'll let you know. And we've done that for a long time. And I'd say that's changed, at least in Colorado Springs, about 20 years ago, where it's important as a community, I know what's on your mind. And I spend a lot of time and a lot of effort out of my 50 or 60 hour week having meetings with people. Things like this, where the best part of this to me, besides the great lunch, thank you very much, is asking your thoughts. What are your concerns? What are your issues? And I do that a couple times a week with groups about this size, sometimes larger, sometimes smaller, and actually asking you what's on your mind. And I get to do that. I have some standing committees, Southern Colorado Ministerial Union, faith-based leaders, community leaders meetings, so I meet with them every quarter, and I consider them my eyes and ears. But you're my eyes and ears too. Everybody lives in this community. You have an idea of what you think is going on in our community. And by the way, what do you think, and we do surveys, probably every year and a half to 2 years, and ask people, what's your number one concern? And I don't know if anyone in the room has been selected for the one that we're doing right now, but this year it's a phone survey, and they'll ask you questions like, are you comfortable walking around your neighborhood? Are you comfortable walking around your neighborhood at nighttime? And things like that. Have you dealt with a police officer? What was his attitude? Did he seem like he was trying to help you and things like that? So our ratings are usually very high, but by the way, what do you think, every time I ask the community what the number one public safety concern is in our community, what do you think it is? Gang issues? Traffic. And I just couldn't say it better than that. Traffic safety is the number one issue in our community, and it has been for a long time. There's not really even a close second. And again, violent crime, well, gosh, every single one of those is a tragedy. But when we leave here in a few minutes, we go back to wherever we're going, getting there safely, counting on your kids, your wife, your husband to get home safely. It's traffic safety. And there's a lot going on in our community simply because of congestion and some other issues. And at the table, we were just talking about some strategies that I'm going to be using in the next year or so. I'm really thinking about bringing back, do you remember we had the photo red light program? That kind of got whisked away, and I won't go into details about the politics of that and some of the staffing issues I had keeping that going, but I think it's time to bring that back. And what I'm doing right now is crunching all the numbers on crime analysis, traffic analysis, and saying, here's the top 10 intersections where we have the most side impact, T-bone collision, fatalities and deaths, and let's put some cameras up there. So I'm going to try to take about 10 of those and put cameras up. And it's funny, some people think it's a good idea, others don't think it's a good idea, but I guarantee you, I promise you something, if you don't run a red light, you won't get a ticket in the mail. I promise you. So we're gonna look at that. What I kind of wanted to maybe spend a minute talking about is, as your police chief and boss of the police department, what keeps me up at night? And right now, it's two things in a nutshell. It's staffing for our police department, as well as our community relations. Let me kind of lead into that with just a couple of quick factoids. A Colorado Springs Police Department, who gives me an idea about what our population is here? Dr. Reed, where are we at?
300,000 or something.
I think we're about 450.
450.
Maybe a little bit more so. Last census, we're up to about 450 now. 685 sworn police officers in Colorado Springs, about 250 civilians, communication center specialists, records and ID people, things like that. And I have a really robust group of about 500 volunteers. So 685 cops. On an average year, let's say last year, 2016, we handled about a little more than 320,000 911 calls where someone believed that someone was going to get hurt or killed if you didn't get a cop there really quick. About 320,000. Another 300,000 non-emergency calls. Your car was broken into, you went away for the weekend, you went skiing, you come back, your car was broken into, the stereo's gone. Another 300,000 of those. So well over 500,000 times the phone rang. If you're somebody who likes to talk on the phone, I got a great job for you. I can hook you up with a really, really good job. But it's really busy in our communication center. In 2017, the city's general fund budget was about $272 million. So in this current year, $272 million all in. The CSPD portion of the general fund budget was about $92 million, or about a third of it. And then there's a thing called public safety sales tax. So every time someone in the city spends money on something, 0.4 of 1 cent goes to the police department and the fire department. We split it pretty equally right down the middle. So all in, the 2017 CSPD budget, aside from grants and things like that, is about $109 million. All in, the fire department budget and the CSPD budget is about 52% of the total budget for the city. I don't know how you feel about that. Obviously, public safety is a high priority for the rest of the city, but it ain't cheap, it's expensive. I'd say about 89% of my whole budget at the police department is paying benefits for our police officers. Not a whole lot of things. Cars are the things, but mostly you're paying for the police officers' time. As it relates to staffing, how many cops are enough? How many police officers do we need? It keeps me up at night. The gold standard for measuring how well a police department is doing is in how they solve crimes and how long it takes them to get to your house when you need them. We call them priority 1 calls for service. When you dial 911 and say, hey, I think someone just broke into my house, I hear them downstairs, the clock's ticking. There's a little bit of queue time in dispatch, getting the questions answered, where are you at, who are you, what else do you know, and then getting cops on their way. It takes a long time. That gold standard is not being met very well here, and that's a direct relationship to staffing. We're working on that. But anybody have an idea what the average priority 1 response time is for CSPD right now? 8 minutes. Someone said 8. That's been the gold standard. When we started PSST almost 20 years ago, that was our goal, to try to get to 8 minutes. Most of the time, 90% of the time, your first knock on the door by a police officer when there's a problem should be in 8 minutes or less. The fire department's still using that, I believe, too. Unfortunately, we're around 12 minutes. And does that 4 minutes make a difference? It depends. But it's not a fact I'm proud of, and we're getting that number down. You probably read about 7 or 8 months ago, I had to make some tough choices about folding in from specialized unit, our gang team, and some other specialized teams back into patrol to knock that number down because it was approaching 14 minutes. And it's down to 12 minutes, and my goal is still around 8 minutes or so most of the time. So that's a tough one. Our clearance rates are well above our national average. You have a very safe city here, and I'm proud of that through the fire department and police department. We do a really good job for you. Our clearance rates are well above our national statistics. Let me ask you a question again, if you don't mind. Do you think in this city you're more prone to be a victim of a homicide or an accident where you lose your life, a fatal traffic accident? Traffic accident. Did you know, you're absolutely right. Did you know that at this point in time, and again, we're into September, so we're 2/3 of the year's over, 6 people have lost their lives in auto pedestrian accidents, and maybe a 7th. So far, that's a big problem in our community. So on an average year, there's always more people that lose their life in this community because some of the nonsense you see in the street, red light running, speeding, and what's the other big food group that we're seeing all the time? Distracted driving. It's horrifying. And people are getting killed because of that. Anybody have an idea ballpark of how many homicides this city of almost 500,000 experiences on a yearly basis? Who said that?
Is it about 30?
Good. 25 to 30. And while each one of those is tragic, that's a bad weekend in Detroit, you know? That's just a road rage weekend in Philly. What's that? Do I have Detroit people here? Sorry. So about 25 to 30 people lose their life through homicide. City of 500,000, statistically speaking, although each one is a tragedy, that's about the number we're at. And it's usually in the 30s and 40s on traffic accident deaths, so know that. We have about 14 police officers per 10,000 community members in this city, about 14 per 10,000. Other cities, Aurora's and the Denvers and others, they're around 16 to 21 to 23%. So I'm trying to struggle with that number. The mayor gets it. He supports public safety. He's trying to free up some money to make sure I have some more people to hire. But my hope is in the next 5 to 10 years, we have at least another 100 police officers in Colorado Springs to get that 12-minute time down a little bit and help with our clearance rate. So that's kind of one of my goals as far as those two gold standards. Retention of our police officers, that's another issue. And then I'll go on to some good things, but that kind of keeps me up at night too. On an average month, I have 4 officers that resign from Colorado Springs Police Department. It used to be around 2.5, and now after Ferguson, Missouri, I have about 4 cops a month that say that's enough for me, and they want to, should I say it, be firefighters? No, I'm just kidding. They want to do something else. It's a tough job. And also, I'm the guy that about a year ago thought it was a good idea to take every single cop that's in a uniform and hang a camera off their neck for 10 hours a day, so I know everything they say and everything they do, especially during the tough circumstances of a physical arrest or some kind of a domestic violence call or something like that. So it's not an easy way to make a living, and right now, 4 police officers a month, and I'm trying to hire them as fast as I can. I don't know what the answer is on that. I can tell you that I believe that after Ferguson, Missouri, the most lasting impact that police in the United States will see is hiring quality, qualified police officers of color in America. It's going to be really, really hard to do that. And one of the most important things I can do as your police chief is tell you that your police department reflects the community that it serves. It's huge. It's a big deal. There's a couple things that I have to do if I'm doing my job right, but it's hiring the right people, get in the door, and then in 5 or 10 years promoting those people if they deserve it. But if I don't hire the right people and they're not reflective of our community, shame on me. And we're good. We're around about 1 point or so from our community composition in our African American community and our Hispanic community. Guess where we fall down the most though? Say women? Yeah. And it has been historically a male-dominated career profession. Firefighting too. We're probably 14 to 15% of police officers in Colorado Springs are women. It should be half. And it's tough. It really is. And I wish I had a solution to that, but we're still working on it. So I talked a little bit about one of the most important things I do. Who I hire, who I let in the door, who I promote in a couple of years, and ensuring equality of enforcement. I believe that if you live in the Broadmoor, if you live in Pikes Peak Park, if you live up by Sky Sox, if you live in Rock Rimmon, the delivery of services by our police officers better be exactly the same, and it better be with responsiveness, excellence, and humility. And I challenge you, the next time you see a cop, tell him you heard Kerry blabbing on for 15 minutes. And, he said these things are really important to him. And tell the cops that there's 3 things that Kerry believes really important, that are really important. And that's responsiveness, excellence, and humility. And if that cop says he doesn't know what they are, doesn't know at least 2 out of 3, get his card for me, will you? I'll take care of it. But when I got this gig 5 years ago, I promised the mayor, I promised the community, the cops, and my family that we deliver police services with responsiveness, excellence, and humility. And I think we're getting better at that. As cops, we're not very humble, but we're learning to say, hey, I could have done better. I don't know the answer to that. Let me figure it out and get it to you. And that's important to me, that people know that cops are approachable, and they'll do that if they made a mistake. Back in the day when I came on 30-something years ago, You never, ever, ever admitted as a police officer you made a mistake. That's how you get sued, you know, that kind of nonsense. So that humility part of it is huge to me, and we're getting better at it, so I'm very, very happy with that. Community relations, that keeps me up at night. Our numbers are good, our grades are good when we ask the community how we're doing. But it doesn't just come down to asking some questions. It's over the long haul, how we're doing with internal affairs complaints and accountability and transparency. It's one of the reasons why we spent the money that we did on cameras. And again, if I were to ask the folks in the room here, do you think it's a good idea to give our police officers cameras? I think if I spent a couple minutes trying to talk you into it, you'd think it is a good idea. But you know, the reality of it is, and it was a hard sell to the cops, the reality of it is that at some point, if a police officer is wearing a camera and someone makes a complaint against a police officer and the camera shows otherwise, it does not create good feelings when I, as a police chief, say, hey, I looked into your complaint. When you said that Officer Pete Carey did this, or this, either discourtesy, which is our #1 type of complaint, or excessive force, or whatever. And I looked at the film, sir, and Carey didn't do that. In fact, he thanked you, you thanked him, and you know, all that. People don't usually leave with a good feeling after that, because at some point I'm calling shenanigans and saying that's not what the camera showed. And I can tell you, after having these for a number of months, it has shown in over 90% of the high 90s that it's getting the backs of the police officers what their story is, what the reports bear. And by the way, so far we've already recorded 115,000 videos of different criminal incidents or in progress arrests and things like that. The storage cost of it's amazing. It's about 4,100 a week, videos of things that are going to be used in court later on, or in an internal affairs case and things like that. So as far as the future of policing, at least in our region, I think what is most important in our community, in our area, is a regional approach to how we look at things. And that includes the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, Fountain Police Department, when it comes to training our officers and responding to big deals. Let's say Planned Parenthood or something like that. I think that is the future, and I think that's what we've got to continue to strive to try to improve. And I have a good working relationship with our sheriff, Bill Elder. You guys ever had him here for a talk? Mm-hmm. You better give him another hour and a half. That's all I got to tell you. But I think that is the future. I think that as we look at how we train our officers, how we qualify at the range, all those things, we've got to come together and be smarter about our money and a consistent response on that. I want to wrap up by saying there are some ways you can get involved with the Colorado Springs Police Department. A couple times a year, we hold a Citizens Academy. We spend 9 or 10 weeks with us on Thursday nights for a couple hours and hear about the different presentations of the different work groups. It's really, really rewarding. It kind of gives you a good idea. We've been doing that for years now, and I find that a lot of people come to that with not a great feeling about their police department. I think they leave there with a better understanding, so I'm very, very happy with that. We have a very robust volunteer program, Citizens Advancing Public Safety. If you ever wanted to get involved, I could get that figured out for you, and I think it would be very rewarding if you had a couple hours a month. I encourage everybody in this room at some point to do a ride-along with the cop. If you haven't done it, do it. Pick a military payday Friday night full moon. And ask the cop to take you downtown about 2. Has anyone in here done a ride-along? It's pretty cool, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see, and again, I would encourage you, if you in your neighborhood where you live, come in and do a ride-along and see what goes on in your neighborhood at nighttime. I think you'll be surprised at how busy these police officers are and what they do to keep you safe at nighttime. I think George mentioned our SHIELD 616 program. I cannot be happier with that. It's not a matter of if we're going to have another big deal again like Planned Parenthood or New Life. It's going to happen again. And for this community to come behind a nonprofit like SHIELD 616 and give these cops the gear they need, and basically it's protective gear, ballistic helmet, and some other necessary pieces of equipment to keep them alive when the big deals, give them protection against rifle shots. Because we give them soft body armor for handgun rounds, but not rifle rounds. I just can't swing it financially right now. It means the world. And the cops, I can see it in their face, but I can absolutely see it in their wives and their kids' faces when we do these presentations. So if you have any interest in helping out the police department, again, SHIELD 616 is phenomenal. So thank you, George. I don't know if I caused anybody indigestion or not yet, but I thank you very much for allowing me to come here. I thank you very much for lunch. Is there any questions? Do we have time for questions? Sir?
Have you caught the mad pooper yet?
Let me just say, while it's not my number one priority, it's my number two. See? Get it? I get it. Just because I think it's funny?
A concern in my neighborhood is something that happened this morning and happens quite often, and it's street racing. And I mean vehicles that are extremely powerful. You can hear them. And
North Academy, live up on North Academy?
near Circle. I can hear them from North Academy.
Yep. It is a problem. It is an issue. We've had, specific to street racing, we've had a lot of motorcycle racing. We deploy people out there. Again, it's having enough cops to do it right. We deploy a lot of weekend street racing teams out there. It's very organized, if you didn't know that, and it's causing us a lot of problems. And there are occasional really, really bad accidents. Lately, what we've been seeing, believe it or not, in addition to that issue, just the cars, is it's called baiting. We have guys in packs on motorcycles, some have military involvement, that have the GoPro cameras that are riding by, kicking the police car, banging into the police car and taking off and engaging us in a pursuit. Can you imagine that? And bad things follow when you get into a chase, a high-speed chase with a guy on a bike who's not that good on the bike anyway. And it's not worth getting somebody killed. But we're on it the best we can. We deploy as much as we can. If there's specific areas and times and you want to send it to me, I'll try to do that. I don't know if you probably don't know it. Lately, in the last month or two, about 2 months ago, we did such a good job pushing them off of Circle and Academy and Union. They found all these empty streets back by the airport, and we're going crazy about those big wide streets that go to all the companies out there and going crazy out there. Well, I guess that's better than Academy, but still, it's a problem. So it's a constant issue. We've done some things to change legislation to our senators and House reps and things like that, but we're doing the best we can.
I just wanted to let you know, fair warning, I'm a defense attorney, but I think the quality of policing now is demonstrably better than it was about 10 years ago. And I fully support the body-worn camera program. And if you all don't know, keep in mind, I've got my issues, I'm a defense attorney, I have to have them, but our police department is actually so much better than most of the law enforcement agencies in southern Colorado. We really are lucky to live in Colorado Springs. My question to you is, how do you, what kind of psychological testing or screening do you use to make sure that the officers that you're hiring or bringing through the training academy meet your standards of responsiveness and humility?
Great question. Great question. You know, when you walked up, George whispered, she's an attorney. And I said, what kind? She's not a defense attorney. So there we go. So again, the most important thing I can do is making sure who I let in the door. We go through, I'm fortunate at CSPD, I have my own full-time police psychologist that works at the PD. I don't know even if Denver has that. So I have a pretty robust, I call it a gatekeeping way to keep our folks, making sure that the right people are getting in the door. We go through a whole series of testing through MNPI and all that to make sure that they're psychologically sound. And I look at every single person I hire in the police department, and that's hundreds and hundreds of people a year. I look at the file and I've got to make this decision, you know. And again, there's always that maturity character. When the kid was 16, he went to a toga party and drank till he passed out. Well, he's 28 now. So that was probably maturity as opposed to character. The guy's 35, he's still smoking weed 3 times a year, maybe not. That kind of deal. As it relates to the questions I ask about responsiveness, excellence, and humility, I put everybody that I hire as a police officer in front of an oral board of people that understand that and get it in their heart. And they ask scenario-based and actual questions about that. If you were to ask me what the biggest problem I have in hiring young men and women to be police officers, I get it locked down pretty good on whether or not they're okay psychologically and whether or not they embrace those philosophies. It's resiliency is the hardest one. Figuring that out, and there's a book out there now, maybe you can help me, Doctor, is it a lady named Duckworth called Grit. It talks a lot about military academies and what it takes to get through tough times and all that. Resiliency, finding somebody that goes through some things. Do you remember the Halloween shooting on October 31st downtown? There was two sets of brand new cops with senior cops on that morning came out, and they all fired shots at this guy and finally took care of business with him. One of those guys who looked real sharp didn't last. A couple weeks later, we had Planned Parenthood, and right after that, his wife drug him in and said, "Sign here, here, and here. You're leaving. You're quitting." And then after that, there's a number of my officers that still had a lot of scar tissue from that. And how do you determine resiliency? How do you test for resiliency? Responsiveness, excellence, and humility. There are some kind of past behaviors that I think show that very well. But resiliency, putting someone through what you do to be a firefighter or a cop and saying you're going to come through as a whole person, that's what I struggle with. And I've learned some things from some reading and some testing that the military is using, but it's tough. Sir?
Yeah, concealed carry. A number of us in this room are concealed carry.
Show of hands, who has a gun?
My biggest concern with carrying a weapon is using it because I'm not going to be a victim. I'm not going to wait 12 minutes. So,
Right.
I'm not going to be a victim, but one of you guys coming in, how do I make your job easier? You come running in, I'm off to the flank.
Yep.
I've got a weapon. I'm not the bad guy.
Yep, it's teachers in schools, that issue's been on for a couple of years. Why don't we, and I think Hanover School did it, didn't they? They said the teachers could carry CCW. We get caught out there for something going on. How do we know you're the good guy? How do we know you're the bad guy? Sheriff Eldon and I go back a long time, 35 years, and if he was standing here with me, we'd have this back and forth. I'd say, "So, Bill, you've issued 47,000 CCW permits in El Paso County. Do you think that's a good thing?" And I'll rib him a little bit, and he'll say, "Why, yes, we're approaching 50,000. Is that a good thing for our community? Does it make our community safer? Today, before I came out to enjoy a couple minutes with you, I got a call from a reporter that's doing a big article on that, on concealed weapons permits and what do you do to stay safe, and does that make our community safer? And I guess if I have a second, I'll ask. So when you leave here, you got to stop at a Safeway and get a head of lettuce, next 15 minutes. So you hit the closest supermarket, and you're walking down the aisle, and you see someone with an open carry, not a CCW, but an open carry. Does that make you feel more safe or less safe? Raise your hand if it makes you feel more safe. Okay? If it makes you feel less safe. Okay? And I got to tell you, I've been asking this along with the sheriff because we get into this big fist fight about it for years. It's about half and half in our community. If we're honest with each other, you know what the answer is? The answer to the question is saying, "What did the dude look like?" That's the honest answer to that. But I can tell you, I've been watching these numbers for years. People who have concealed weapons permits, of which there are 47,000 in El Paso County, by far and away the biggest number in the state, are very law-abiding people. We're coming out right now, to answer your question in a long way, I apologize. We're coming out with some good videos on kind of what to do and what to expect if you're contacted by a police officer and you are a CCW permit holder. If you're in your car, if you're in your vehicle. And there's some things that you probably are aware of depending on what the nature of the traffic stop is. Let's say you get stopped at one of my new photo red light cameras. And you announce yourself, "Hey, I'm Pete Carey. I want you to know I'm an off-duty cop, and I do have a handgun on my person or in my vehicle. Do I have the right as a police officer to say, do you mind giving that to me?" We're working through that with our cops and with our public right now, and kind of what's the best way to do it. I would just say very shortly it is the best thing, in my opinion, to do, because you're going to get a cop revved up when he knows that there's another gun at the scene of whatever it is. You may be a witness to a traffic accident. You may be trying to help a neighbor that's got a medical issue, and you have a gun. It's a good idea to tell the officer, "Hey, by name, say, 'Hey, I'm Pete Carey. I do have a concealed weapon.' It means the world to the police officer, and then he gets it. Having said that, though, there's a very, very interesting video from about a month ago somewhere in the Midwest where a police officer on the dash cam of the car stops somebody. It's a man, and he says that. And then the police officer, he says, "Hey, I've got a gun." The cop's pretty low-key, nonchalant about, "Okay, appreciate you letting me know." can I see a driver's license? As the guy reaches for the driver's license, something happens, and it ends up to be an officer-involved shooting. So I think the time is right around here to have our officers, through a really good video, kind of explain what we should be doing, and have a version for the community saying, if you are one of the many law-abiding CCW permit holders, here's some good ideas, some do's, and maybe some don'ts. You know, you sure don't want to hang it out the window of the car. If the cop knocks on your door, I mean, no-brainer deals, come to the door with a gun in your hand, things like that, because the hardest thing for me as a cop is when I get on scene at a burglar alarm or some kind of disturbance, knowing who the good guys and the bad guys are. I don't usually get all the details and figures, and if I haven't met you before, I don't know. So we're coming out with some educational stuff that I think will help with that. But I think always it's a good idea letting the officer know, you by name, say, I'm Pete Carey and I do have a concealed weapon. And then the cop will tell you how comfortable they are. Okay, thanks. You don't have to do anything different. Thank you.